When a TikTok exposed a woman faking pregnancy, labor, infant loss, and abuse, many more victims who had also been traumatized by this serial pregnancy scam came forward with similar strange stories. Finally, after a year, she was caught, arrested, and sentenced, though even the judge who handed down her sentence said he knew it was distasteful, but his hands were tied. You are such a genuine gem. Thank you for clicking on my video. I'm Brooke Makenna, and today's case, it does involve a sick and twisted lie that had to do with deaths and bringing in very compassionate people and completely traumatizing them. So let's take a brief moment for our sponsor, Rocket Money. So after Christmas, New Year's, Valentine's Day, not to mention inflation, finances can be something that we're all very overwhelmed about. And I personally needed help managing my money better. And that's when I found Rocket Money, because not only did it help with the budgeting side of it, but it would cancel my subscriptions that I was paying for and didn't mean to be paying for, and it only took a few taps from me in the app to complete. They would also negotiate my bills for me, my personal bills, which I don't want to have to be doing when I'm already negotiating at work in the business place. One of my favorite features is actually the budgeting though, because they keep you so on track. They notify you if you are overspending in a certain category, and so they hold you accountable. They're like a little accountable buddy in your pocket. So if you want to join, go to rocketmoney.com/Brooke Mckenna or use the link in the description below to get started for free. That's right, it's free to download at rocketmoney.com/Brooke Mckenna. Or you can unlock premium features, and the average customer can save up to $740. I hope this helps some of you guys out. Now let's get back to the story. So in December 2023, a woman pled guilty to 21 charges, including fraud, false pretenses, mischief, and committing indecent acts. However, she had faced 52 charges. She had been dubbed the serial pregnancy scammer, one of the most prolific at that. This was 25-year-old Kaitlyn Braun, who was from Brantford, Ontario, and she turned out to be a registered social worker, but she was unemployed around the time where she was doing these scams. She was found to have hired 17 birthing doulas to help her through her pregnancy and postpartum, except she was never pregnant. But it was 9 months prior to her pleading guilty when she had actually been arrested. This was March 13th of 2023, and doulas were coming forward saying that she had traumatized them, and they had actually gone to police to press charges. During that time, her charges had included criminal harassment and sexual assault, which are among the charges that she refused to plead guilty to. But back in March, there were 6 doulas saying that their experiences with Kaitlyn were very bizarre and deeply traumatic. And one victim even took to TikTok to warn other birth workers that this woman was on the loose. However, she didn't want to say this woman's identity, so she didn't name any names. It ended up going viral, and many began to claim in her area that they were going through the same experience.
If you don't know me, my name is Amy. I am a doula in London, Ontario. I specialize in trauma, grief, and loss. I also provide support during birth as well as postpartum. Very recently, 3 weeks ago today, I supported somebody through what I was told was a stillbirth. I had somebody reach out to me saying that they were 24 weeks pregnant and the doctors had found no heartbeat. I supported this person in person as she experienced contractions, providing physical, emotional, and mental support for her. This person was not and has not ever been pregnant or experienced a loss. This person has targeted doulas across Ontario as well as all across Canada. We are close to probably 50 doulas that are all in communication and confirm that this is the exact same person who has been doing this for quite a while. And it needs to stop. If you are a doula and somebody reaches out to you for support, please reach out to any other doula that you know to protect yourself. Because unfortunately, this is where we're at, needing to protect ourselves. I have never before questioned somebody on the legitimacy of their loss, nor do I want to. But at the same time, we do need to take precautions now because we are being targeted. We need to make sure that no other doula is impacted by this person. We need to make sure that nobody else is caused undue trauma because somebody else is mentally unstable and unwilling to get the help. And people can come at me and say me speaking out is impacting someone's mental health. I am not saying this person's name.
So, a month prior to her arrest, the police had actually gotten Kaitlyn Braun in to make a statement, and that is when she made a statement saying that she had actually been sexually assaulted by a doula, one of the birth workers. Now, this turned out to be a false statement, and this false statement would lead to her charge of mischief. Meanwhile, through social media, through TikTok and Facebook pages and group chats, this woman was being identified as Kaitlyn Braun. She was arrested, and police at this time asked for more victims to contact them, believing that there were more victims out there, possibly even further out from that area, saying that this investigation was marked by immense dedication, compassion, and attention. And at this time, of course, Kaitlyn's social worker license was temporarily suspended. By May, so 2 months after her arrest, 11 more victims had come forward claiming that they had also been scammed by this woman. 7 months later, and Kaitlyn remained in custody, and on October 20th, she made her first court appearance. It was revealed that Kaitlyn had sought birth doula services from June of 2022 to February of 2023. She was requesting support during and shortly after childbirth. Now, doulas aren't necessarily healthcare professionals. They don't have the degrees, however, they do have certificates, and they're often there to help with the emotional trauma of it, the grief around pregnancy, loss, just the emotional toll that it can take on women during labor and also postpartum.
Supporting a woman's body through those contractions, lactation support, getting dressed and undressed in and out of a shower.
Around this time, CBS News stated that a group of these doulas had confided in them that the whole ordeal was causing them severe trauma, along with loss of valuable time for some, and for some, no financial compensation for their work. Now, prior to some of these doulas' identities coming out, some spoke anonymously to Cosmopolitan. Now, one doula claimed that back in August of 2022, Kaitlyn had DM'd them on Instagram and told them that she had learned about her pregnancy late after conceiving due to a sexual assault. She said she was due at any point. And so this doula went to her home to help out in what she thought was a labor. Inside the home was a sleeper set, baby clothes, a breast pump, and there was this woman that appeared to look pregnant. There was nothing out of the ordinary here. In a few hours, Kaitlyn told the doula that something was leaking from her body, so they thought her water was breaking. So for the next 2 days, Kaitlyn would labor at her home with a doula helping her. The doula attempted to get her to the hospital, but she resisted. And then finally, she had offered to drive Kaitlyn there, so Kaitlyn was in her back seat. And the doula claimed that Kaitlyn began screaming and sobbing, saying to completely forget that she exists. The doula finally got her to the hospital, where Kaitlyn began saying maybe her water didn't actually break. So they left. However, a few days later, Kaitlyn said that the labor had, started up again, and so they returned to the hospital, where an OBGYN would take an ultrasound and would immediately be shocked and told Kaitlyn there was no pregnancy. The only thing in her uterus was an IUD. The entire ride home, the doula said Kaitlyn simply stated, "I'm so confused." The doula herself was even more confused. But then 3 months later, in November of 2022, two doula friends claimed that Kaitlyn had told them that she was a queer sexual assault survivor and had conceived due to the sexual assault, and that she needed them to basically guide her through the labor over the phone. So they claimed that during this phone call, they had heard car sounds, hospital sounds, Kaitlyn throwing up. Everything seemed realistic. And then she told them that she had a stillbirth and that the bleeding wouldn't stop and that she was going to lose her uterus. Then it escalated, and Kaitlyn was telling them that she was diagnosed with a clotting disorder and late-stage pelvic cancer. The doulas then wrote a will with her. Kaitlyn was then telling them she had been assaulted by 2 of the hospital staff. She was sending pictures to them the whole time, saying that the police were involved at this point. The doulas began to look up these average-looking pictures on Google and found that they were right there on Google Images. They then began calling the police and the hospitals to confirm her stories, and she was not known with either of these departments. Then the real police were sent to her home to get a welfare check and found her in her living room completely fine and not pregnant. Now, 3 months after that, another doula said that in February of 2023, she had taken Kaitlyn to the hospital from her Airbnb that she had rented to go into labor, and that the labor was taking some time. So a backup doula was brought in to help, and the backup doula would tell the original doula that Kaitlyn's water had broke, but it looked like pee, and she was certain Kaitlyn had just peed in front of her. That's when they started to get suspicious. They began looking up on different doula group chats, Facebook pages, and that is when they found this story of this scammer, and that is when they packed up and left and decided to leave Kaitlyn there, believing it was a scam. And that is when the original doula took to TikTok to say that she had this experience, to warn others about it, and within an hour of posting that, she had a message from another doula requesting pictures and information because she was certain she was sitting there with the scammer as they spoke. This did turn out to be Kaitlyn.
I dated Kaitlyn Braun for a very, very short period of time. We met on Facebook dating, turned into a couple of dates. She asked me to be her girlfriend on February 14th, Valentine's Day. And I'm here to expose her character because I still have text messages from when she told me she was pregnant from an SA. She is stating here that she's pregnant. If I want to break up, it's fine. She's sorry. You know, this is the beginning of her building her storyline, I guess you could say. This is the following day. I'm asking her how she's doing. And this is the day that she tells me that the baby doesn't have a heartbeat. So she has to deliver the baby that particular weekend. This is the last message I sent to her and the last message we said to each other. Basically, me ending things in the best possible way I could think of. A couple days later is when I had the police call me.
However, nothing was yet done. Nobody could quite get the police to do anything about this. And the next month, in March 2023, Kaitlyn would tell another doula that she was going to deliver a stillborn conceived by rape. And the doula said that Kaitlyn had friends with her, so they did this virtually over the phone. And then suddenly, Kaitlyn was said to have a placental abruption and a hysterectomy, then organ failure, then she was put on life support, and then this doula was only talking to her friends because Kaitlyn was dying. The doula was talking to Kaitlyn's friends and working them through the process of saying goodbye to Kaitlyn. And this is when that doula found the Facebook page and the TikTok about Kaitlyn Braun, and she was added to the victim support group. And a few days later, Kaitlyn was finally arrested. So Kaitlyn was taken to court in January of 2024, and court documents were submitted stating that Kaitlyn had coerced 19 victims to give her massages while she was naked with the intent or insult to offend them under the pretense of pregnancies that she knew were false. That she would tell these doulas she was often in different phases of pregnancy that were a result of sexual assault, and that she had no support from her family and needed them. Out of 17 doulas who had come forward, 5 now remain under publication ban. However, 12 have since given permission to state their names and their stories, especially after speaking to the court. And so doula Ashley Palmer actually did an interview with Castanet News that she had been working as a doula for 3 years, and she believed Kaitlyn was pregnant. She believed everything. She even believed the labor until she called the hospital where Kaitlyn had gone, where she claimed to have a stillbirth.
Hear about these situations happening, but then to live through it and like be so deceived was like the traumatizing experience in many different ways. At that time, I thought she was experiencing a loss, so it seemed very normal to me. Like there was no red flags, there was nothing that popped up on my radar as not normal. And I've been a doula for 3 years. Like I know the sounds people make during transition and active labor, and it was totally believable. Like everything she was saying, I was like, yeah, okay, this person is going through this. And then she said that she was walking up to labor and delivery, and she was like having full-on fake conversations like with emergency staff and nursing staff. I messaged her and I was like, okay, I know you've given me a fake address. I know you weren't at the hospital. Like, what's going on? Like, if you can tell me, then maybe I can get you the proper help that you need or help you get those resources. Go into Victoria General and call me from the labor and delivery phone. Like, let me speak to a nurse that you're with. Like, she then somehow called me from a Victoria phone number, which like blew my mind. And then I answered. She faked, like pretended to be a labor and delivery nurse. I could still tell it was her. I'm not experiencing a stillbirth currently. I went through one without any support a while ago, and for some reason I felt reaching out and pretending it was happening would bring me some sort of healing. Like, I didn't even believe it when I first figured it out that it wasn't real. Like, I felt betrayed and I felt taken advantage of.
Then a London, Ontario doula named Amy Silva told investigators that Kaitlyn had contacted her in mid-February, a month before she was arrested, and Kaitlyn told Amy that she was around 24 weeks pregnant, but she was going to deliver a stillborn baby. So when Amy showed up for labor and wanted to support the mother through this grieving process, it was at an Airbnb. Kaitlyn said she was a fourth-year university student. She lived with roommates, so she wanted to get out of the house to go through with this labor to feel more comfortable. During the labor, Amy said that the contractions were spaced out, which was normal when you're nervous. She watched Kaitlyn cry, and she did her best to calm her down. And Kaitlyn was just saying that she was scared, she couldn't do it. Nothing seemed off at this point. There were really no red flags. However, because this was a pregnancy loss, Amy decided she wasn't going to charge this grieving mother, which many doulas often would do if there was a death. They would just do it out of the kindness of their hearts. And so all of this time, she knew she wasn't getting back. She knew she was doing this for free, but also she believed that there was a loss that didn't actually occur. So this London doula, Amy Silva, made an impact statement in the court speaking directly to Kaitlyn, and she claimed that Kaitlyn had exploited her passion and left her with trauma, depression, anxiety in both her personal and professional life. She claimed that financially, the therapy, the court, the gas, the parking added up to nearly $6,000 that she had spent. She said, "The safety measures I've had to implement reflect a genuine fear instilled in me by your actions." Kaitlyn then refused to look up and acknowledge her. It turned out that Amy Silva was actually the doula who ended up making the TikTok, who got the information out there, exposing Kaitlyn Braun and her scam. Her username is AmyWhereHealingHappens. I'll have it linked down below if you'd like to follow her, follow along on her process, or watch her TikToks. But she is the brave one that spoke out and got everyone connected. Then a doula named Sienna Haynes told the court that Kaitlyn was her first ever client. And now she wonders if she can trust any client at all. She is less trusting. She's even fearful of some of her clients. And she said that's not acceptable for someone who wants to give the best support to people. She claimed that Kaitlyn Braun made her afraid to do the work she's passionate about. And she's now even changed her contracts to add a false pretense clause, as well as no longer offering virtual or free services. Kaitlyn has literally taken away the opportunity for grieving mothers to have free services given.
Get to her house, and it is not clear whether or not she's pregnant. I don't not body shaming or anything, but just the way that she was shaped, it was not clear. And I was disappointed because I was really hoping for some concrete proof. So I go inside and we immediately start doing all the things. We start curve walking, we start doing lunges, she's sitting on her birth ball, we're doing all the different positions to help labor progress, but also help her cope with contractions. I also at one point sent a voice note to my boss at the doula agency, and I will play that for you now. Warning, it is kind of upsetting.
Then a doula named Kristen All said she still to this day can't comprehend what happened with Kaitlyn. She said Kaitlyn would call her all hours of the night, complaining of contractions, talking to her for literally hours, not letting her go. The doula said she was exhausted mentally and physically, especially when Kaitlyn began to describe the poor treatment she received at the hospital. It made Kristen so enraged, and then Kaitlyn texted her saying that her baby had been born, a stillborn. She sent a photo. And, of course, Kristen began to support this grieving mother until she was reached out to by other doulas, claiming that none of this that Kaitlyn said was real. Kaitlyn owes this doula $400, and she said she can't afford to take her to small claims court to get it back. She said that the only support that these victims have had is each other, because nobody else would listen to them. Doula Megan Stanley said that once she found out about these lies, she was afraid of Kaitlyn's delusions and that maybe Kaitlyn would come and find her. She bought security cameras for her home. She had night terrors. She was waking up screaming. And then an anonymous doula said that she was mid-labor with Kaitlyn at an Airbnb when she heard the news about the pregnancy scam her client had created. She said it was pure terror. She was looking at this woman that everyone was talking about, and she gathered her things and drove away as if Kaitlyn was chasing her. So when the doulas finally realized that this was happening to all of them before Kaitlyn was arrested, before police were doing anything, they came together to discuss the possible motive. Many believe that Kaitlyn just wanted an intimate connection and attention, and others thought maybe it was a birthing fetish.
Incredibly believable. She would go as far as to vomit in transition of labor. So the end stages of labor, it's very common to do things like vomit, to have the shakes or to shiver. At that point, I called Brantford Hospital to see if she was a patient there, and I called twice, 12 hours apart, and both times they said she was not admitted there.
But this is when the court would hear from the defense about Kaitlyn's history. She had a long history of mental health struggles, starting with separation anxiety when her father had left the family when she was a teen. She then had memories of childhood sexual assault. She self-harmed as a teen. She was diagnosed with major depressive disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, bipolar, borderline personality tendencies, and she had a history of suicidal ideations. She had swallowed batteries twice trying to harm herself. But for 17 years prior to her arrest, she had almost 200 hospital visits for depression, hallucinations, overdoses, and multiple sexual assaults. However, it was stated by these doctors who had seen her that they had found that most, if not all, of her complaints were made up. Now that, of course, is allegedly, because we know a lot of times women aren't believed, especially with sexual assaults. So we're just going to put that out there. That is what the doctors stated. That is not fact. But after a medical assessment, it was found that there was only one type of therapy that was thought to work for Kaitlyn Braun: behavioral therapy to stop destructive behavior. It was also found that she would likely reoffend and that the treatment would probably modify the frequency, but it would not stop her. Kaitlyn then made a statement to the court herself from inside the prisoner's box, and she said, "I know that the words I speak today do not take back what I did and that they don't automatically create healing. However, it is my hope that my words, along with my plan of action, shows that I am a changed person. There's a strong sense of shame when I think of the pain I caused. I can't still be that person, nor do I want to be. I'm deeply and truly sorry. I hope that you're all able to heal." Kaitlyn's lawyer then told reporters outside of the courtroom that she believed that Kaitlyn's statement was heartfelt, that they were hoping for a 2-year conditional sentence followed by 3 years of probation. These 2 years would be spent on house arrest. They were also saying that they would be okay with them requiring in-depth counseling for Kaitlyn, the one type of therapy that was said to work on her.
I think the submissions so far speak to mental health diagnoses, speak to significant loneliness.
Several of the doulas were not happy with the sentence provided by the defense, and all the doulas felt like their statements were being ignored and not fully understood.
I'm angry. Yeah. I am beyond angry. Since the crimes, we have been silenced.
We've been muzzled. Even our statements today were heavily redacted. It was hard to just get the words out of my body. Every time somebody reaches out, it's like there's something in the back of my mind about what if they're lying, what if they're not being truthful.
There is no sentence that will give us justice. Never. And the 2 years in the probationary period, that's a joke.
Today honestly feels like the Crown Attorney is more defending her than he is for us.
Then the judge, Justice Robert Gee of Brantford's Court of Justice, claimed that Kaitlyn was fundamentally dishonest, that her whole history was filled with deception, manipulation, and he asked for the sentencing phase to actually be deferred for a month. He was supposed to sentence her that day, but he wanted more time to make that decision. However, a month later, Kaitlyn Braun was sentenced to 2 years of house arrest while not using the internet or social media, as well as wearing a GPS ankle bracelet, no contact with victims, and mandatory counseling, as well as 3 years of probation. So the 31 charges that Kaitlyn did not plead guilty to were just dropped, including the sexual assault. Now, while this sentence was handed down, Kaitlyn kept her head down. Justice Gee said he didn't agree with the sentence at all, but he was reluctantly bound to impose it, given that Kaitlyn was a young, first-time offender who was pleading guilty. He said, "I appreciate that many victims will find this ruling as distasteful as I do." Now, some of the victims, the doulas, were said to burst into tears hearing this. Doula Megan Stanley said that it was disheartening, but unfortunately the judge's hands were tied, so she knew he couldn't really do anything. Though Megan has said, "I'm not going to let Braun win. I'm going to continue to help people and give them the best support I can. I'm not going to let her ruin it for me." Now, the Association of Ontario Doulas, with 300 to 400 members, claimed that this case brought awareness to the fact that doulas are compassionate people, which is something that can be taken advantage of and often is. This is actually quite common, especially in the world of birthing fetishes. Now, Cosmopolitan wrote an article about this, as you know, and they wrote a line that I thought was just perfect. It said it appeared that Kaitlyn had found a perfect target, people whose entire job is to believe women.
The problem is not that we believed women. Our belief, not the problem. The problem is that somebody betrayed that trust profoundly. But I want it known that I am not changing my practice when it comes to believing pregnant people. My attitude towards that situation is very different than my attitude towards any other person. As a doula, I believe people, okay? I believe women and trans people when they tell me, A, who they are, B, what they're experiencing, C, what they have experienced in the past. Because nobody can tell me my experience, and I can't tell anyone else their experience. My practice and my attitude around that has not changed. The problem was not believing a woman. The problem was the woman betraying that trust. And I truly don't think there's anyone else out there like her. There's scammers, and sure, be skeptical when you need to be skeptical, but like, there's no one else in the world who is gonna lie and carry on the way that she did.
It's heartbreaking, it's devastating that another woman could make it even harder for women to be believed, and that all of these doulas who are really the most empathetic, nurturing souls who will do this out of the kindness of their hearts, sometimes for free, sometimes just because they want to help and not financially helping them at all.
It's fairly common in doula work for people to offer pro bono loss support. And I do want to be clear that I didn't make an exception for this client. I didn't get manipulated into offering free support. She definitely told other people that she would pay them and then didn't, things like that. But some people did get paid their fees. This is something I've done for many years. I've never charged for loss support. So hopefully that helps clear things up a little bit, but I know it's a little bit confusing.
I do feel bad for the doulas who felt like this wasn't enough sentence, this wasn't enough justice. I just wonder if something more could have been done to give her a sentence in prison to make sure that something can be done and something is changed, because I am afraid that she will do this again after her 2 years of house arrest, maybe on probation, maybe after probation, because even her medical assessment believes that this will not end for her and that therapy is very unlikely to help. Besides this one therapy that might help if she ends up going through it. So do you think she should have received time in prison? Is house arrest and therapy enough? Will she do this again? And is there a way to stop her? I think especially for doulas in this area, they are very well aware of this woman. But if she were to move to a different place, this could start happening all over again. And that is my fear. And police even have said that she could have possibly had victims all over. And that these victims in Ontario weren't necessarily the only ones. Maybe by spreading this case, more victims will realize what had occurred, and they will be able to find this group of women to support them and help them through this. And hopefully this will reach a doula who wasn't aware of it, who is now very aware, and not only of Kaitlyn Braun, but of the fact that this can happen. And it's a very tragic and disturbing lie. To me, it's very disgusting that she would make people believe that she was assaulted. She had no family. She was doing this on her own. And then she had these stillborn babies. And then in some cases, she was going through a lot of health issues. She was taking all of these resources away from people who actually needed it, away from people who were actually going through these things. And that is what is not okay. That is what I believe deserved more than 2 years of house arrest. But all we can hope now is that she is a changed woman after her 5 years, and that this is the last we hear of Kaitlyn Braun. But don't forget to speak up. Your voice is powerful enough, and I love you to absolute pieces.